So, good day everyone. Today I will be discussing the remaining topics of theories of crime causation under midterm examination. So, virtual classroom etiquette again, and our learning objectives. At the end of the lesson, the student should be able to explain how a certain individual acquires criminal or undesirable behavior, describes how the agents of socialization contribute or affect the behavior of a specific individual, and manifests as to how a person responded or reacted with regards to the conduct displayed by other persons whom he or she is socializing with. So, categorizing the sociological theories of crime causation. Under this categorization is the social disorganization theory. It was being introduced by Clifford R. Shaw and Henry D. Mackay. So, they say that they links crime rates to neighborhood. So, why crime rates links to neighborhood? So, because crime rates are elevated in highly transient or yung tinatawag nating mixed use. So, when we say mixed use, it is where residential and commercial property exist side by side, in which the fabric of social life has become fade, or you can easily join them dahil nga masikip ang residence area nila. And these kind of localities are unable to provide essential service such as education, healthcare, and proper housing. And as a result, dahil nga lack sila in terms of education, there is an increase in significant level of unemployment, single parents families, and mostly families on welfare and aid to dependent children, or yung tinatawag nating ADC. So they view crime-ridden neighborhood as those in which residents are trying to live at the earliest opportunity. So residents during this time are not interested anymore when it comes to community matters. That is why the common sources of control such as the family, business community, and social service agency become weak and disorganized. So, kaya karamihan sa kanila ay napipilitang umalis ng kanilang lugar for their own benefits. Kasi kung magstay sila doon, then mas high risk ang poverty, unlike kung aalis sila and maghahanap sila ng lugar kung saan angkop at magagawa nila ang gusto nila. So, because no person who are born poor that makes poor for his or her entire life, unless you don't exert effort just to be successful in life, and that talks about social disorganization theory. So, this social disorganization theory talks about what is our lifestyle and kung ano ba yung magiging buhay natin kung magstay tayo sa lugar na alam naman nating hindi tayo mag-grow and hindi tayo magsasucceed. So, in terms na maging pabigat tayo sa lipunan, why not na maggawa tayo ng paraan para maging successful tayo? Kasi hindi naman tayo pinanganak na mahirap, then for the entire life natin, magiging mahirap tayo. Siyempre, gagawa tayo ng paraan para tayo ay mag-succeed. Next, Concentric zone theory. It was introduced by Ernest W. Burgess and Robert E. Park. So, the areas of heaviest concentration of crime appeared to be the transitional inner city zones, where large numbers of foreign-born citizens had settled. Shaw and Mackay's main assumption is that, even though crime rates change, they found that the highest rates were always in central city and transitional area. So, the zone farthest from the city center had lower crime rates. Kasi mas prone naman sa crime yung area na mas malapit sa cities or within the cities where there are huge number of people. So, as said in the title, Concentric Zone Theory, let's start with Zone 1. So, meron tayong meron tayo 4 zones. Ang una, sa Zone 1, Central Business District. Nandyan yung mga hotels, offices, business, and other commercials. So we have 5 zones, sorry. First is Central Business District, hotels, offices, business, and other commercials. So this covers the larger part of the cities kung saan maximum number of employees ay nandun due to numerous opportunities for works. Kasi nga, central business siya. And dahil nga central business siya, mas marami yung opportunity of works pagdating sa cities or sa central part ng cities natin. Next is Zone 2, Zone of Transition. It is called also as gray zone in which there are tendency to conversion of land uses. Land and properties are held for speculation purposes. So, tinawag siyang zone of transition since land and other properties are being renovated and expanded for business transaction and other purposes. Kasi po, nagkakaroon tayo ng conversion of land kung gagamitin po natin to for business transaction or for other purposes. Next is Zone 3. Lower income working or yung mga homes or slums. Meaning, it is an area of a city where poor people live and the buildings are in bad condition. So, kung sa atin, ito ang tinatawag na squatters area in which their income is not enough for their family. Next is Zone 4, high-income residences. It is favorable for white-collar or middle-class family. It is a place where people with high income resides gaya ng villages, mostly may mga kaya ang nakatira because they can afford to live and to buy what they want since white-collar and middle-class family po ang mga nakatira sa residence na to. And last zone is Zone 5 or yung commuter zone. People who work in the center choose to live in the suburbs. So, ito yung sakop ng largest cities and most of the people works in industry. Kaya nasa Zone 5 sila, they live near where their works are and it is good for those who are commuters because less burden sa kanila pag malapit sa kanila ang working industry nila. Unlike kung nasa malayo sila, mas mahihirapan silang magpapalik-balik sa work nila. Mas okay na yung tumira sila malapit sa cities wherein nandun yung work nila. Para kung mag-commute man sila, malapit lang po and less burden na din sa kanila at mas makakaipon pa sila. Next is Anomie Theory. It comes from the Greek word nomos, meaning without norms. So, anomic society is one which rules of behavior or yung norms natin have broken down or become inoperative during periods of rapid social change or social crisis such as war or famine. So, anomie theory, according to Emile Durkheim, Durkheim sees anomie as a state of social disintegration. Due to far-reaching social change, ano ba yung mga social change natin? Those are industrialization, introduction of the structural principle of division of labor. So, social differentiations are increasingly emerging. For example, ano ba yung mga nag-e-emerge? Yung mga poor nagiging rich, while yung urban areas natin nagiging rural areas. So, the disappearance of old principles of structure and order weakens social cohesion. Ano ba yung cohesion? Ito yung condition in which people or things are closely united. As a result, general social rules are no longer observed. The collective order dissolves and a state of anomie emerges. The consequences of this are increased suicide and crime rates. That is the concept of anomie theory. Next is, under this anomie theory are mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity. So when we say mechanical solidarity, it is defined as a characteristic of pre-industrial society which is held together by traditions, shared values, and unquestioned belief. While organic solidarity refers to the post-industrial system in which the place is highly developed and dependent upon the division of labor and people are connected by their interdependent needs for each other's services and production. So, the difference is that in mechanical solidarity, it is our tradition, beliefs, and shared values, as I said earlier, during ancient time, while organic solidarity is highly developed or modernized, and there are more job opportunities that may help for each individual to become independent in their own little way. So, take note of this. Mechanical solidarity is pre-industrial society, while organic solidarity is the post-industrial society. Meaning, pag mechanical, pre-industrial. Ibig sabihin, bago pa magkaroon ng mga modern technology or mga highly developed na technology natin. While si organic solidarity are post-industrial system. Ito na po yung nangyayari at this present times. We are highly organized or highly developed. Next is strain theory. It holds that the crime is a function of the conflict between the goals people have and the means they can use to legally obtain that goals. So, tinatawag din siyang goal means blockage. So, those who fail to attain their goals because of inadequate means would feel anger, frustration, and resentment, which referred to us as strain. So, those people who are in strain or pressure may develop criminal or delinquent solutions to the problem of attaining goals. So, in short, strain theory talks about goal means blockage. Dahil nga doon sa tinatawag nating strain or yung mga feeling natin of anger, frustration, and resentment. So, an example, Mr. X has the intention to buy a car, but he has no money for down payment that may result to carnapping in order to obtain his dreams. So, in this example, your goal is to buy a car, but the means you are using is wrong. Why? Because you have no money for down payment, ang naging resort mo ay nag-carnap siya ng sasakyan or ang naging resort ni Mr. X is carnapping. And that is goal means blockage. Na-block mo yung goal mo dahil yung means na ginamit mo ay mali. Gusto mong makuha or gusto mong mabili yung sasakyan mo pero gagamit ka ng or gagawa ka ng ibang means kahit na masama itong paraan para makuha mo ang goal mo. And that is the blockage. Kaya po siya tinawag na goal means blockage. So, Merton developed what he called social adaptation to explain that although some people have inadequate means of attaining success, other people who have the means reject societal goal as being unsuited to them. So, there are 5 modes of adaptation according to Merton. Isa-isahin po natin yung 5 modes of adaptation. So, first is conformity. So, in conformity, in which the individual accepts both conventional goals and means, kaya nakalagay dyan ay acceptance for cultural goals, while in institutional means, it is also acceptance. Therefore, in conformity, we are both positive. For example, Topi wants to be a policeman. That's why, despite of poverty, he served as working student in order to attain his dream. In this example, Instead na mag-stop si Topi sa pag-aaral, he thinks of a way to attain his dream, and that is to become a working student. That is acceptance for his goal or positive and another acceptance for his means. So sa example natin in conformity, si Topi gusto niyang makapagtapos ng pag-aaral, but due to lack of financial or problem financially, ang ginawa niya is nag-working student siya para ma-achieve niya yung dreams niya. Therefore, yung goals niya is positive, while yung means na ginamit niya is positive also. That is both accepted. That is conformity. While innovation, when in terms of cultural goals, it is accepted or acceptance, positive, while sa institutionalized means, it is being rejected. So, in innovation, the individual accepts the goal but rejects the legitimate means of attaining them. The goals is being accepted but the means is being rejected. As I've said, positive, negative. Kung kanina kay conformity, positive, positive, kay innovation, positive, negative. This is the mode of adaptation followed by those law violators because the success of those criminals shows that innovative means work better and faster than conventional one. So one example of it is Mr. Martin wants to become rich. Instead of selling fruits and vegetables in the market, he chose selling prohibited drugs such as shabu. So in this example, you will observe that the cultural goal is positive, in which he wants to be rich, but the means is being rejected or negative, since instead of selling fruits and vegetables, he chose to sell prohibited drugs such as shabu to become rich. In short, gusto niyang yumaman through easy money, and that is being rejected. Positive yung goal mo, gusto mong yumaman, but instead na magbenta ka ng prutas, ng gulay sa palengke, ang ginawa mong means or ang naging solution mo is magbenta ng shabu. And dahil nga sa pagbebenta mo ng shabu, easy money siya. Dahil meron ka ng pera, alam mo sa sarili mo na yayaman ka na. And that is wrong or being rejected. Kaya po acceptance and rejection. Next is ritualism, wherein an individual rejects the goal but have legitimate means of attaining them. That is rejection of cultural goals and acceptance of means. Ritualists gain pleasure from practicing traditional ceremonies regardless of whether they have a real purpose or goal. So an example of ritualism, when we apply it to specific conduct in school. Those who are sleeping while the teacher is conducting lecture is a ritualist. Why? Because the students reject the positive goal to listen the discussion, but their means are positive, since they did not disturb others. That is ritualism. So, cultural goals mo is kaya po naging negative dahil natutulog ka sa klase. Although intention mo is makinig, mag-aral, but nakatulog ka. And that is being rejected. Hindi naman pwede sa school na habang nagkaklase si teacher is tulog ka. And your means that you use is being accepted. Bakit? Dahil nga hindi ka gumawa ng eskandalo or hindi ka gumawa ng eksena sa klase nyo. Instead na mag-ingay ka o ingayin mo yung katabi mo, kausapin mo yung katabi mo, or lumabas ka ng lumabas, ang ginawa mo is natulog ka. And yung means na ginamit mo, instead na maka-disturb ka sa klase is tumahimik ka or natulog ka na lang. And that is being accepted. Kaya sa ritualism po ay negative and positive. Pang-fourth is retreatism. From the root word retreat, means to withdraw or surrender. It is otherwise known as the escapist mode, in which the individual tends to reject both the goals and means of the society. It is both rejection or negative. For example, Miss Soy, after discovering that her boyfriend was with another girl, experienced extreme jealousy, thereby committed suicide leading to her death. So, it is both negative or rejection kasi the moment na na-discover mo na ang boyfriend mo ay may kasamang iba, ay mali na. But instead na i-confront mo siya para kausapin, ang naging solusyon niya or ang naging solusyon ni girl or ni Miss Soy ay mag-commit ng suicide that leads to her death dahil sa selos niya, and that is negative or both rejection. So sa una, bakit siya naging negative? Nakita mo si boyfriend mo na may kasamang ibang babae, that is negative. Kasi when you are committed with each other, dapat wala ka ng sinasamahang iba. Lalo na yung may meaning. And the means that you use dahil sa sobrang nagselos ka is mag-commit ng suicide. And that is wrong. Kaya po pareha siyang rejected and negative. And lastly, for Merton's mode of adaptation is rebellion, in which the individuals involved in substituting an alternative set of goals and means for conventional ones. Kaya po positive, negative ang goals natin. Those revolutionaries who wish to promote radical change in the existing social structure and calls for alternative lifestyle. An example po is yung mga goals and beliefs natin. Kasi sa iba't ibang lugar ay may iba't iba ding goals and beliefs. So, nagiging positive and negative siya dahil sa isang lugar, may iba silang culture. And then, pag pumunta po sila sa ibang lugar, may iba din pong culture. Therefore, magkakaroon ng alternative that will suit and be acceptable for the place where they are. Kaya po positive and negative. For example, sa lugar ng 13 may ibang beliefs, while sa lugar ng Tansa may iba din beliefs. Ngayon, positive yung beliefs ko sa lugar namin, pag pumunta ako sa lugar nyo, nagiging negative. Pero in order for me to become positive sa lugar nyo, kailangan kong i-adapt kung ano yung beliefs na meron kayo. Kasi ako yung dayo sa lugar nyo. Kaya po positive, negative. Again, for Merton's mode of adaptation, when it comes to cultural goals and institutionalized means, meron po tayong 5 modes of adaptation: conformity, innovation, ritualism, retreatism, and rebellion. So, for conformity, positive, positive. For innovation, positive, negative. Ritualism, negative, positive. Retreatism, negative, negative. And for rebellion, positive, negative, positive, negative. Next, relative deprivation theory, introduced by Judith R. Bloch and Peter M. Bloch. They emphasizes that a sharp division between the rich and the poor creates an atmosphere of envy and mistrust. So, constant frustration suffered by the deprived individuals because of their economic status that may lead to aggression and hostility and may result to violence. So, in relative deprivation theory, criminal motivation is fueled both by perceived humiliation and the perceived right to humiliate a victim in return. Accordingly, lower class may feel both deprived and embittered when their life circumstances to those persons who have more than enough money. So, for example, for constant frustration, Thea and Dane are neighbors. So, Thea is wealthy while Dane is poor. Every day, Dane finds it difficult to prepare food because she is poor, while Thea's food varies every day. In the long run, poor Dane may feel envious and bitter towards the wealthy position of her neighbor. Time will come that because of the extreme frustration experienced by Dane, she may either rob the house of Dea because of enviousness. So, enviousness, ito yung meron ng iba na wala ka. Ngayon, dahil nga magkapitbahay kayo, laging masarap yung ulam ng kapitbahay nyo and mayaman sila, possible na one day dahil nga mahirap ka and nandun ka sa lower class or yung tinatawag nating have-not sa iba ay possible na makakommit ka ng crime, and that is robbery. Kasi dahil sa naiinggit ka, dahil gusto mong magkaroon ka din ng meron yung kapitbahay mo, ang gagawin mo is pagnanakawan mo siya. That is relative deprivation theory. Next is general strain theory, introduced by Robert Agnew, who reformulated the strain theory of Robert Merton. He suggests that criminality is the direct result of negative affective states, and those are anger, frustration, depression, and disappointment. So, Robert Merton mode of adaptation are yung conformity, innovation, ritualism, and rhetoricism, and rebellion. So, strain theory talks about Goldman's blockage. So, this time, ang causes daw po ng stress ng tao are anger, frustration, depression, and disappointment, o yung result ng negative affective state natin, or yung stress. That's why they called it general strain theory. It represents as a whole what exactly happened when a person experiences stress. Ito po yung negative affective states. Those are anger, frustration, depression, and disappointments. Overall, once na na-experience natin yan, tinatawag na po siyang stress. So, negative affective states are produced by a variety of sources of strain, such as strain caused by failure to achieve positively valued goals. Example, Mar wants to study in college, but because his parents could not afford to send him in school, may end up as construction worker. So that is strain caused by the failure to achieve positively valued goals. So gusto mong mag-aral, pero nagkaroon ng failure dahil instead na magporso ka sa study mo and hindi ka gumawa ng paraan para maporso mo yung study mo because your parents cannot afford you to send you in school, you end up in construction worker. That is caused by failure to achieve positively valued goals. Another is strain caused by disjunction of expectations and achievements. Example, San is a graduate of criminology who took and topped the board examination, but because of height requirement, she may wait for the approval of the height waiver. But San knew that her classmate who took the board exam thrice already and had a high-ranking father was successful in the recruitment using other eligibility. San, using Agnew's general strain theory, may feel stressed and frustrated. And yes, he will feel stressed and frustrated kasi po, even though you are intelligent, yung qualification mo is hindi pa din papasok. Dahil ang main qualification sa atin sa Philippines when it comes to entering in Philippine National Police, kailangan po ang height requirement. And kahit gaano ka kagaling, if hindi pasok sa standards nila ang height mo or hindi mo na-meet yung height requirement nila, ay hindi ka makakapasok. Unlike sa classmate ni Sana, thrice na nag-exam, but then dun sa pangatlong beses niya nakapasa siya and naging successful siya sa recruitment. And nagkakaroon siya ng inequality. Kaya po nagiging unfair. Kasi si Sana nagtap sa board examination, hindi nakapasok. Once lang siya nag-exam and nagtap pa siya sa board examination. But due to lack of height, na ang kailangan sa entering Philippine National Police ay hindi niya na-meet. He is not qualified. But then, yung classmate niya, thrice nag-exam, yung nakapasa sa pangatlong beses, nakapasok na siya sa recruitment process. Kasi nga po, pasok siya and qualified siya dahil siya po ay matangkad. Unlike kay San, hindi niya na-meet ang height requirement. Next is removal of positively valued stimuli. Jay had a brother and somebody killed his brother. In return, out of anger, because that person killed his ever-loved brother, Jay might kill also the person who killed his brother. So, the loss of positive stimuli may lead to delinquency. As the adolescent tries to prevent the loss, retrieve what has been lost, obtain substitutes, or seek revenge against those responsible for the loss. Kaya po sa example natin, si Jay might kill the person who killed his brother. Gagawin niya ang lahat para maipagtanggol ang brother niya. That is removal of positively valued stimuli. Na kahit alam mo na mali ang gagawin mo, mawawash out yun lahat dahil gusto mong maipagtanggol ang kuya mo and yung brother mo. And yung brother mo na mahal na mahal mo. Kaya po, removal of positively valued stimuli. Next is presentation of negative stimuli. So, example, during the first day of board examination, the proctor did not allow you to take the said exam because you arrived 1 hour already. In this case, you as the examinee may feel frustrated or got stressed, or worst, you may seek revenge against the proctor. And that is really happen in real life situation. Bakit po? Kasi once na magtitake ka ng board exam, hindi si proctor ang mag-aantay sa'yo. If nagbigay sila ng time na 6 o'clock, na andun ka na sa examination venue or sa venue na examination natin, dapat before 6 o'clock nandun ka na. Nakaupo ka na. And this time, you arrive 1 hour already late. Now, kapag 1 hour late ka na, you are disqualified in the examination. Kasi, bakit kapag bibigyan if nagbigay sila ng oras? Kasi po, pag sinabi natin board examination, mahigpit po sila dyan. Dyan po natin makikita or matitest if yung estudyante is willing and kaya niyang ipasa ang board exam. Ngayon, kapag ka po hindi ka na pa-exam, anong mafe-feel mo? You are being stressed. Or worst, you may seek revenge against the proctor. Isa sa mga magiging resort mo is ma-stress ka at magagalit ka sa proctor. Totoo po yan. Bakit ka magagalit? Siyempre, hindi ka pinapasok and you are being stressed na alam mo sa sarili mo na you are ready for examination. Pero dahil nga sa late ka, hindi ka nakapag-exam or hindi ka makakapag-exam. Next, cultural deviance theory. It is the combination of social disorganization and stray theory. So, under this, cultural deviance theory is the independent subculture. This lower class subculture stresses excitement, toughness, risk-taking, fearlessness, and immediate gratification. Subcultural norms such as being tough followed by the lower class may tend to clash with the conventional values. And what is conventional values? It is the norm set by the society. So an example, you are living in a disorganized areas because for you it is easy to deal and to get an opportunity to have an income, but in the other place, what you are doing is not suitable for them. That is cultural deviance, in which there are differences of culture, but still we are dealing with it. And sometimes, because of varieties in culture to gain success, it may possibly resort to crime and delinquency. So now, what is delinquent subculture theory? introduced by Albert K. Cohen. Status frustration refers to the state where youths are incapable of achieving their legitimate goals in life because of the social conditions that they are into, such as having poor parents and living in slum areas. With this, Cohen was able to believe that because of status frustration, lower class boys who suffer rejection by middle class or yung rich people may tend to form deviant subcultures. So, because of social conditions, youths are incapable of achieving success legitimately, and the lower class youths experiences a form of culture conflict that Cohen labeled as status frustration. So, sa status frustration, Cohen called those form subculture as corner boy, college boy, and delinquent boys. Yung status frustration niyan may tinawag si Cohen na tatlo po. Ano bang tawag doon? Corner boy, college boy, and delinquent boy. Now, isa-isahin po natin. Corner boy, the most common response to middle class rejection. He is not a chronic delinquent but may be a true one who engages in petty or status offenses such as sex before marriage and recreation drug abuse. So those are persons who are involved in petty offenses, and they called it as status offenses. So status offenses are offenses committed by minors like truancy or continuous absence for 20 days. And mostly at this present time, youth, especially minors, are being engaged by sexual activities due to the effects of the environment and other factors that may lead them to do uncertain act. That is corner boy. Next is the college boy. Embraces the cultural and social values of the middle class. He actively strives to be successful by those standards. So, they are more aware than corner boy because they are thinking for future and strives or work hard for their success. Kasi po si corner boy po, those are the person who only committed a status offenses or petty offenses. While si college boy, those are the persons or individual who are aware because they are thinking for their future and for their career in the future. Next is the delinquent boy. Adopt sets of norms and principles in direct opposition to middle class values. He strives for independence and that nobody can control his behavior. He may join gang and willing to take risks and violate the law. So, nagagawa niya yun because they are being abandoned by their parents. They don't experience the affection of the person whom they know will give enough care and understanding for them. Kaya dahil sa mga kulangan at pangailangan nila, nagkakaroon sila ng antisocial behavior which makes them delinquent. Kaya po sila tinawag na delinquent boy. Next is Differential Opportunity Theory. Introduced by Richard A. Cloward and Lloyd E. Ollins, states that people in all strata of society share the same success goals, but those with conventional society will seek alternative or innovative ways to gain success, such as joining drug syndicate and any other forms of illegal activities. So this theory is a combination of strain and disorganization principles into a portrayal or gang-sustaining criminal subculture. Because of the differential opportunity, kids are likely to join in one of the three types of gangs. Ano po yung three types of gangs? Criminal gangs, conflict gangs, and retreatist gangs. So when we say criminal gangs, exist in stable lower class areas in which close connections among adolescent, young adult, and adult offenders create an environment for successful criminal enterprise such as joining gang. So they are the gangs who only do some criminal acts for their own benefits and for the beneficial of their groups, while conflict gangs thrive in highly disorganized areas marked by temporary residence and physical deterioration. They are willing to fight to protect their own and their gang's integrity and honor. So the members of this gang are tough adolescents who fight with weapons to win respect from rivals and engage in destructive assaults on people and property. So in this time, gagawin nila lahat for the integrity and honor of the gang, even though in harsh ways. And for Ratwitis gangs, double failures because they are unable to gain success through legitimate means and unwilling to do so through illegal ones. They have tried crimes or violence but either too weak or scared to be accepted in criminal or violent gangs. So, nagiging double failure siya kasi you are thinking two-way. If you will do it or not, or in short, nagdadalawang isip ka. If you will join or not. Dahil alam mo na may mababiolate ka, pero sa tingin mo, ito lang ang makakatulong sa'yo to gain success, and that is Ratwitis gang. So, pag nagdalawang isip ka dahil iniisip mo na mali yung gagawin mo, pero kailangan mong gawin. Dahil nga, alam mong mali, pero gagawin mo dahil may mga pangailangan ka na alam mo yun lang ang magiging solusyon. That is Ratwitis gangs. Next, social process theory. Under social process theory is the drift theory or yung tinatawag natin neutralization theory. Introduced by David C. Macha and his associate Gresham M. Skies. They viewed the process of becoming a criminal as a learning experience in which potential delinquents and criminals master techniques that enable them to counterbalance or neutralize conventional values and drift back and forth between illegitimate and conventional behavior. So, according to drift theory or neutralization theory, becoming a criminal is learned through experiences and for what we see by others. One reason it becomes possible, it's because of subterranean value culture. Ano ba yung tinatawag na subterranean values? Morally tinged influences that have become entrenched in the culture but are publicly condemned. These are values that are condemned in public but may be practiced privately. Example, viewing pornographic films. So, hindi mo naman siya gagawin in public but rather gagawin mo siya in private. So, wala namang nanonood ng pornographic films na nasa public places ka. Dahil, pagdating sa pornographic films, nagkakaroon tayo ng privacy. Another is drinking alcohol to exist and gambling on sporting events. So, wala namang nagiinom na nasa gitna ka ng kalsado or nasa public ka. Especially ngayong pandemic. Dahil ngayong pandemic, nung nagkaroon ng liquor ban, wala namang talagang nagiinom publicly. But rather, nagiinom sila patago. Kasi alam nila na possible na makakommit sila or may mabiolate sila na batas. That is the subterranean values. Next is drift. Refers to the movement from one extreme of behavior to another, resulting in behavior and drifts away from the rules of the normative society and participate in subterranean behaviors. So their behavior can be conceived by falling along between total freedom and total restraint. Hindi naman pag sinabing criminal, kailangang magtago. Dahil, for example, sobrang may mga pangailangan ka. Dahil nagiging criminal ka lang or nakakagawa ka lang ng mali kapag ka may pangailangan ka talaga. Especially dun sa mga lower class natin. Yung mga nakatira sa squatters area. Dahil nga, low income sila or kadalasan wala pang income, ang nagiging way nila para mabuhay or nagiging resort nila para mabuhay or means is magnakaw. Ngayon, pag nagnakaw sila, alam nila na gagamitin nila yun sa mabuting paraan pero maling paraan nila ginawa. That is drift. In which, hindi mo naman talaga kailangan na i-conceive ang freedom mo, rather, kailangan mong gumawa ng mabuti. Kasi, nandyan tayo sa part na, gagawin ko ba to or hindi. Pero pag hindi ko to ginawa, wala akong ibubuhay sa pamilya ko. Pero kapag ginawa ko naman to, alam ko, mali. Nandun tayo sa time na, or sa part na, or moment kung saan nagdadalawang isip tayo kung gagawin natin ang isang bagay or hindi. Next is denial of responsibility. Young offenders sometimes claim their unlawful acts were simply not their fault, or yung tinatawag natin, they made me do it. Of course, wala namang criminal na aamin, so you will deny it, and it explains that you are the one who did first move, so that he is being provoked to do antisocial acts. Example, pinupulaan mo isang tao, then sinaktan ka niya. You made him to do it for you. Kaya ka nasaktan. Because you're telling something that makes her or him hurt. Kaya mo ide-deny ang responsibility mo sa kanya dahil siya ang first move. So, ibig sabihin sa denial of responsibility, hindi mo ako in responsibility mo sa isang tao na nasaktan mo dahil siya yung unang gumawa ng dahilan para saktan mo siya. And yun nga yung pinupulaan mo siya. Pinupulaan ka niya. Dahil nga pinupulaan ka niya, ginantihan mo kung ano yung pinagsasabi niya sa'yo. And yan po yung they made me do it. Pinabrobok mo akong gawin ko yun sa'yo, kaya hindi kita responsibilidad. Next is denial of injury. Criminals are able to neutralize their behavior by denying the wrongfulness of their act. They have insurance. So, they are denying the wrongfulness of their act because they don't want to pay for it. Sasabihin niya na hindi siya responsible sa naging victim niya dahil babaliktarin niya ang situation. Kasi in terms of accident, wala namang taong nakasakit ang aamin. At the same time, aakuin lahat na nangyari, unlike those who are willing to face what they've done. So, sa denial of injury, di naman pag na-aksidente ka, aakuin niya yung ginawa niya. Sometimes, or mostly, may mga taong inaako talaga nila yung kasalanan nila as long as willing silang i-face yung ginawa nila. But, karamihan din po sa mga tao na naka-aksidente is tumatakas. It doesn't mean na tumatakas sila is tatakasan nila yung responsibility nila. Because, one of the reason is natatakot silang harapin kung ano yung nagawa nilang pagkakamali. And yun yung i-deny nila. Kasi nga, hindi po sila willing to face what they've done. And they don't want to pay for what they've done sa isang tao. And yun yung tinatawag nating insurance dyan. Ito po yung mga pay na ibibigay mo sa taong nagawan mo ng kasalanan. Next, denial of victim. Criminals would neutralize their acts by maintaining that the victim of crime had it coming. In this case, the criminal would blame his victim. So, sa denial of victim, for example, na aksidente na nagde-drive ka, therefore, lasing ka. Dahil sa sobrang lasing mo, hindi mo napansin na may papalampas na motor. And then si motor may angkas pa siya. Then nabangga mo. Nung nabangga mo sila, umalis ka na. Sinabi mo na hindi mo kasalanan. Dahil walang nakakita, walang witness, pwede mong i-deny si victim. Pwede mong i-deny na hindi ikaw yung nakabangga sa kanya nung araw na yon. Especially kung gabi nangyari. Lalo na't walang CCTV, walang mga taong pwedeng mag-witness dahil karamihan sa mga tao kapag gabing-gabi na ay tulog na. Ngayon, i-deny mo ngayon si victim na alam mo sa sarili mo na hindi mo ginawa. Okay, next. Condemnation of the condemners. A criminal would view the world as a corrupt place. Teachers show favoritism. So you're accused, therefore, the judge knows the victim, and the outcome is that the judge will in favor of the victim and the accused will be sent to prison. That is one of the example of condemnation of the Condemners, meaning nagkakaroon tayo ng favoritism. Example, si judge. Yung victim is kamag-anak niya. Without knowing, uh, na hindi alam ng mga accused at ng pamilya or ng mga nasa hearing na magkamag-anak yung dalawa. Ngayon, ang naging outcome dahil last hearing na nila in favor sa victim. Kahit na wala naman talaga or pwedeng maabsuelto si accused. Nagkakaroon po ng favoritism kasi sometimes nagkakaroon ng corruption not only for political but in government sector po natin, yung mga judges or yung mga law sectors natin. Mostly po nagkakaroon ng corruption dyan. Corruption doesn't mean na kukuha ka ng pera ng taong bayan, but rather corruption in terms of your inside and external corruption. Sa corruption outside, pwede po dyan yung tinatawag nating pangangkam or pagkuha ng pera ng taong bayan. While sa inside, yung personal na natin. Sa personal part natin in which, gaya nga sa example ko, nakakampihan ni judge si victim dahil si victim is kamag-anak niya. Nagkakaroon ng favoritism. Sa school na lang din po, example, sa isang klase. Ngayon, may teacher ka. Si teacher mo, may favoritism. And yung taong yun na lang lagi ang inuutusan. And kahit na hindi naman siya gaano nakakasagot, napakataas ng grades niya. And that is unfair for the rest of the students or the rest of her or his classmates, in which nagkakaroon ng favoritism si teacher. Next is appeal to higher loyalties. Novice criminals often argue that they are caught in the dilemma of being loyal to their own peer group, while at the same time attempting to abide by the rules of the larger society. Only cowards run away. So novice criminals are those criminals who are beginners. Yet they are being loyal at their own peer group. At the same time, they are abiding the rules of the larger society. They are in the process between how to act really as criminal and decide if they want to really join with that or avoid the given rules of the larger society. Dahil nga beginner sila, kakaroon pa sila ng doubt if susundin ba nila yung peer group nila or susunod sila sa rules and regulation ng society natin. Next, Differential Association Theory by Edwin Sutterland, who suggests that people commit crime by learning in a social context through their interactions with others and communication with them. So he believed that criminal behavior is learned by interaction with others, and this includes learning the techniques of committing the crime and the motives that drives them, or yung rationalization and attitudes for committing it. So, according to Edwin Sutterland, Differential Association Theory, tell me who your friends are and I will tell who you are. And birds on the same feathers flock together, and when they flock together, they fly so high. So, tell me who your friends are and I will tell who you are. Ito po yung mga sikat na kasabihan sa atin ngayon na kung ano yung kung sino-sino yung mga kaibigan mo, that will be reflections of your attitude, that your personality. Kasi yun yung tingin sa atin ng ibang tao na kung masama ang mga kaibigan mo or influensya ng mga kaibigan mo, kaya ka nagiging masama ding tao or kaya nag-iiba yung ugali mo dahil sa nakakasama mo, mga kaibigan mo or kabarkada mo. Next, principles of differential association theory. So we have 9 principles, I think, of principles of differential association theory. First is the criminal behavior is learned. It is not inherited. So, this notion or main notion of this theory is that criminal behavior is learned and it is not inherited. It departs from the principle of the biological perspective that behavior is innate to human being. It asserts that our behavior is not congenital but it is acquired and learned from other persons. Sutterland rejected biological and hereditary factors as causes of criminality. Differential association theory believes that the behavior of individual is influenced and shaped by other individuals they associate with. So according to Sutherland, si criminal behavior daw po ay hindi siya nag-inherit by our ancestors. Rather, ito po ay natututunan natin within the environment and through socialization. Next is criminal behavior is learned in interaction with other persons in a process of communication. So, sa paanong paraan po tayo natututong makipag-communicate? So, through verbal communication or non-verbal communication. So, over the years, movies, newspapers, television program, comics, books, and recently, rap music have been blamed for provoking criminality. Criminal behavior differential association theory argues is more prevalent in individuals who associate and interact with individuals who exhibit criminal mindsets and behaviors. So, dahil nga meron po tayong verbal communication and non-verbal communication, so sa non-verbal communication, nakakaroon tayo, nalalearn natin ang behavior ng ibang tao or na-adapt natin ang behavior ng ibang tao through hearing rap music, watching movies, reading newspapers, watching television programs, and other materials that can be used in communication as long as we are learning from it. Next is the principal part of the learning is criminal behavior occurs within the intimate personal groups. So Sutherland claimed that only small face-to-face gathering influence behavior. Consequently, he focused attention on family or peer groups as the most likely occurs of initiation of criminal values and activities. An individual's behavior is primarily influenced by his family, since that is the first group interaction he is exposed to. Additionally, an individual's behavior is influenced by peer group or through direct and indirect interaction, which is according to number 2. And through intimate relationship with other individuals. Ibig sabihin lang po, sa number 3 natin, within the intimate personal group, nagsisimula daw po tayo matuto ng mga beliefs and ng values natin within our family. And after sa family natin, sa mga peer group natin. Next is, if a criminal behavior is learned, then learning includes the techniques of committing crime. So, in intimate groups, people learn techniques of committing crime as well as the appropriate motives, attitudes, and rationalization. So, for example, many convicted sexual assailants admit that the first time they committed sexual assault, they felt guilty. For example nga, yun nga, nagpumatay ka ng isang tao. Ngayon, dahil may technique silang tinuturo sa'yo, sa unang beses mo or dahil beginner ka, sa unang beses mo na nakapatay ka, you felt guilty. But then, through the process or through the long run of you're doing it, mas hindi ka natakot pumatay ng isang tao dahil alam mo may mga techniques kang nakukuha within your peer group. Next is the specific direction of motives, drives, rationalizations, and attitude is learned from legal codes as being favorable or unfavorable. So the term definition as used here refers to attitudes. So attitudes are the favoring law-breaking are common. So an example, among those who smoke marijuana, which is illegal, people opposed to marijuana laws assert that such laws are senseless and discriminate against the younger generation. They argue that marijuana does no more harm than alcohol. Law-breaking makers who condemn drugs use are seen as uniform killjoys. So ngayon, sa present times natin, dahil nga yung marijuana is masyadong in demand and alam natin na pwede na siyang magamit bilang gamot, is nagiging unfavorable na to sa mga kabataan or sa mga taong mahilig gumamit ng mga shabu or ng mga illegal na bagay para sa kanilang benefits or for their own benefits. So, instead na gumamit sila ng marijuana, ang gagawin na lang po nila is uminom na lang ng alcohol. And isa yun sa pwede mong gawin at the same time hindi mo pwedeng gawin as long as nakaka-harm ka na ng ibang tao. That is unfavorable to the law. Next, a person becomes delinquent because of an excess of definition favorable to violation of law over definition unfavorable to violation of law. So, the sixth principle is the core and the dominant concept of differential association theory. A person becomes delinquent because of an excess of definition favorable to violation of law over definition unfavorable to violation of law. A parent who even hints through word that is accepted to fight, to treat as potential consequence to cheat on income tax return, or to lie may promote delinquency in children unless these statements are outnumbered by definition or attitudes that favor obeying the law. So, sabi dyan, person becomes delinquent because of an excess definition of favorable to violation of the law over definition unfavorable to violation of the law. Example, si parents is continuous yung pagsasabi niya ng masakit na salita sa anak niya, and that is unfavorable or violation to the law. And what they children did is to do antisocial acts, or sometimes nagre-rebelde sila dahil alam nila na puro masasakit na salita at puro pananakit lang ang binibigay sa kanila ng guardians nila or ng parents nila. And that what makes them delinquent or becomes delinquent. Next is differential associations may vary in frequency, duration, priority, and intensity. So when we say intensity, it is the degree of respect a person gives to a role model or associate, while frequency, how often it varies or gaano kadalas ang pabago-bago ng isang situation o ang ginagawa ng mga tao. Next is duration or gaano kahaba yung time na nagkakaroon ng changes sa isang tao para makakommit sila ng crime or may ma-violate sila na laws. And the priority refers to when the behavior has been introduced. Ano ba yung kailangan nilang i-prioritize na behavior? It's either kung mas ipa-prioritize nila yung gumawa ng masama or mabuti. Next is learning delinquent behavior involves the same mechanism involves in any other learning. So, while the content of what is learned is different, the process giving rise to behavior is the same. Accordingly, this means that criminal behavior, like any other learned behavior, is not only learned through observance but through assorted methods as well. For example, yung seduction could lead to acts of deviance. Pag sobrang nasiseduce ka sa isang tao, pwede kang makagawa ng antisocial acts that is wrongful in nature or may mababiolate ka na batas that makes your child or that makes you delinquent person or makapag-reproduce ka o makapag-produce ka ng delinquent behavior. And lastly is criminal behavior and non-criminal behavior are expression of the same needs and values. So for example, if a person is hungry but has no money, there is a temptation to steal. It means that both non-criminal and criminal individuals are motivated by the need for money and social gain. Thieves generally steal in order to secure money, but likewise, honest laborers work in order to obtain money. So, sa criminal and non-criminal behavior, nakakaroon lang po yan ng comparison. So, sa criminal behavior, once na nagkakaroon ka ng malaking pangailangan or kailangan mo ng pera, instead na maghanap buhay ka, is magnanakaw ka. While si non-criminal, in order for you to get what you want, or makuha mo yung money na kailangan mo, is magtatrabaho ka or magbibigay ka ng effort or mag-exert ka ng effort para makuha mo or mabili mo yung mga gusto mo at uh, magkaroon ka ng salary that you will be using uh, for buying what you needs. Next is Containment Theory. Introduced by Walter Reckless, C. Reckless. There are two containment theory, which includes the outer containment and the inner containment. So, outer containment holds the person in bounds can be found in the following components: a role that provides a guide for a person's activities, a set of reasonable limits and responsibilities, an opportunity for the individual to achieve status, a sense of belonging, identification with one or more persons within the group, while inner containment or the personal control, a good self-concept, self-control, strong ego, well-developed conscience, a high sense of responsibility. So the difference between outer containment and inner containment is that in outer, it talks about what you are doing outside, your activities and responsibilities, while inner containment talks about your personal control or yung how you control your personality as well as yourself, or what you think is right and your limitations. So for example, Miss B's friends invite her for a drinking spree, but because B does not drink alcoholic beverage, plus her parents are strict when it comes to curfew hours, then most likely B couldn't engage in such deviancy. So that is the inner and outer containment. Outer containment, you are willing to go out with your friends. But the inner containment, your limitation that makes your mother trust you. Your inner containment. And yun yung hindi mo pag-inom at pag-uwi mo ng maaga dahil alam mo may curfew ka sa iyong mga magulang at pinagkakatiwalaan ka nila. And if hindi mo yun sinunod, that is your ego who do some moves or who did that moves para ma-discourage mo or mawala ng tiwala sa iyo ang magulang mo. That is the difference between outer and inner containment. Social theory, introduced by Travis W. Hirschi. Also called a social control theory, who links the onset of criminality to the weakening of the ties that bind people to the society. So, in social theory, bakit ba nagkakaroon ng weakening of ties sa isang lugar? Na-weaken yung ties kasi alam natin na yung lugar natin or yung place where we are living is hindi maganda ang environment. Or nakagisna na natin yung ganong klase ng environment. So there are 4 elements of social bond: the attachment, commitment, involvement, and belief. So in short, para matandaan nyo siya, magkaroon kayo ng abbreviation na BIAC. B-I-A-C. BIAC. But depende rin sa inyo on how you remember these elements of social bond. So when we say attachment, it refers to a person's sensitivity to and interest in others. So attachment to the parents is the most important. Hirschi views parents, peers, and schools as the important social institutions with which a person should maintain ties. So sa attachment, nagsisimula po yan sa ating family, especially sa parents natin, because they are the most important persons in our life. Next is commitment. It involves the time, energy, and effort expended in conventional lines of action, such as getting an education and saving money for the future. Lack of this, an individual may commit risk-taking behavior such as crime that becomes their alternative for their needs. Dahil nga they are not literally committed. So pagka nawalan kayo ng commitment sa family mo, mawiweaken yung ties dahil mas mapapaaga ka maghanap ng trabaho at mapapalayo ka sa parents mo. Or sometimes nagiging rebellious person ka, and that what makes you a delinquent person, or yung nagiging alternative mo for sometimes na nakakumit ka ng crime. Next is involvement. Heavy involvement in conventional activities in school, recreation, and family leaves little time for illegal behavior. So, dahil nga meron na tayong attachment sa family, we are being committed by them, kailangan meron din pong involvement na lahat ng activities sa school, lahat ng mangyayari sa buhay natin or events is kasama natin sila. Dahil kapag ginawa natin yon in our everyday living, mas mapapalakas yung ties natin or magkakaroon tayo ng strong ties within our family, and mas mapapalayo tayong gumawa ng illegal acts. Next is belief. People who live in the same social setting often share common moral beliefs. They may adhere to such values as sharing, sensitivity to the rights of others, and admiration of the legal code. So, if these beliefs are absent or weakened, individuals are most likely to participate in an antisocial or illegal acts. So, kapag tayo po ay nawalan po ng paniniwala or hindi na tayo marunong magsimba, especially sa mga Catholics and other sekta ng simbahan po, ay kailangan po nating i-respect and kailangan po nating sundin ang mga beliefs na meron tayo. Dahil kapag yung beliefs mismo ang nawala sa atin, hindi na po magwo-work out ang isang bond, or hindi tayo magkakaroon ng strong ties, especially when it comes to our family. Kasi kung belief pa lang ay wala na tayong pinapaniwalaan, kanya-kanya na tayo sa buhay, ay magkakaroon tayo ng different thinking or different thought kung ano ba talaga yung gagawin natin sa isang lugar or sa isang bagay or sa lahat ng mga gagawin natin. Dahil wala na tayong guidance at wala na tayong mapagsisikan ng guidance during our hardships times. Next is social reaction theory or yung labeling theory, created by Howard S. Becker, who explains that society creates deviance through a system of social control agencies that designate or label certain individuals as delinquent, thereby stigmatizing a person and encouraging them to accept this negative personal identity. So, for example, you labeled a person as insane. It was being assumed that he or she is to be dangerous, dishonest, unstable, violent, strange, and otherwise unsound. And because you labeled a recipient as insane, he probably thinks that he reduces his image because that is what other people says for him. Kaya po mag-ingat-ingat tayo sa mga sinasabi natin sa ibang tao dahil possible na yung sinabi natin sa kanila ay makasakit at yun pa yung maging dahilan kung bakit sila po ay gagawa ng hindi kaaya-ayang gawain. So, under this social reaction or labeling theory are, which talks about Becker concerns with two effects of labeling, the recreation of stigma and the effect of self-image, are the stigmatization, which labels are believed to reproduce stigma. People who have been negatively labeled because of their participation or alleged participation in deviant or outlawed behaviors may be socially outcasted, who may be prevented from enjoying a higher education, well-paying jobs, and other social benefits. So, for example, hindi ka ganda ng itsura mo and you're applying to be a flight attendant. Ngayon, during your application ay hindi ka na tinanggap due to your appearance. So, even though you are qualified. So, ganyan ang nangyayari in reality. In favor sila sa kung anong estado at appearance ng isang tao, and that will give negative impact to the applicant. That will talks about stigmatization. na kung ano yung kung ano yung image mo, that will be your reflection. Especially those who are graduates. Kasi once na nag-a-apply ka, kapag nakita nilang untidy kang tingnan, you are not fit to the job. But rather, kailangan mo mag-ayos para ma-fit or i-deal or maka-cope up ka sa kung ano ang meron sa isang lugar na ina-apply mo, sa isang agency na ina-applyan mo. Next is self-labeling. So it refers to the process by which a person who has been negatively labeled accepts the label as personal role or identity. So for example, if a mother keeps on telling to her child that her child is dull, then in school, the child will also assume that he is dull. Kaya po dapat sa sariling bahay pa lang, wag na nating pulaan ang mga anak natin. Especially yung mga kasamahan natin sa bahay. Dahil once na pumunta sila sa school at na-label sila na ibang tao na ganun sila, ay mas dadamdamin nila yon at possible na dahil sa pagdadamdam nila ay makagawa sila ng illegal acts. Next is self-fulfilling prophecy. Deviant behavior patterns that are in response to an earlier labeling experience. A person act out these social roles even they were falsely bestowed. So, if the wife keeps on saying that her husband is cheating on her, even though it is not true, then there is a big possibility that the husband will fulfill the statements made by her husband. So, sa self-fulfilling prophecy, you're accusing other person kung ano siya. Ngayon, dahil nga ina-accuse mo siya na ganun siya, or ganun yung personality nila, ang gagawin ng taong pinupulaan mo or nililabel mo is, yun na yung gagawin niya. Para masatisfy ka lang sa kung ano yung mga sinasabi mo. Gaya nga sa example natin. Kapag yung husband mo, nilabel mo siya na nambababae or nang chichit, ngayon gagawin niya yon para mapatunayan sa'yo na ganun talaga siya. Dahil sinasabi niya sa sarili niya or sinasabi niya sa'yo na hindi siya ganun. Pero nililabel mo sa as cheater. Ngayon, ang gagawin ng asawa mo para mapatunayan na lang or para masatisfy yung needs mo is gagawin niya yung mag-cheat dahil yun yung nililabel mo sa kanya. Next is dramatization of evil. For example, a person who is being labeled a hired murderer may from committing a crime because he is being hired, may become a real evil murderer already. So, sa dramatization of evil, kapag halimbawa, murderer ka, or na-hire ka lang na isang beses as murderer, dahil may gusto siyang ipapatay or may kaaway siya or sobrang kaaway niya na kaya naiinisan niya talaga na gusto niya nang mawala sa mundo, is inutos niya sa'yo na patayin mo. Ngayon, dahil nga na-try mo na siya ng isang beses at alam mo sa sarili mo na nagustuhan mo yung ginagawa mo, uulit-ulitin mo yun at hindi mo namamalayan, you are real evil murderer na. And that is dramatization of evil. Dahil nga sa impact ng environment sa'yo, na nag-utos sa, especially na nag-utos sa'yo, ay nagiging masama ka ng tao. Next is primary evidence. Introduced by Edwin M. Lemert. Involves norm violations or crimes that have very little influence on the actor and can be quickly forgotten. So example, a college student takes a book at the campus bookstore. He successfully steals a textbook and uses it to get A in a course that goes on to graduate and then admitted to law school, and later becomes a famous judge because his shoplifting got unnoticed. It is relatively an important event that has little bearing on his future life. So sa primary evidence, kapag nag-steal ka ng libro or nag-shoplift ka ng libro sa isang national bookstore o sa isang bookstore, ngayon walang nakakita sa'yo, dadalhin mo na yan hanggang sa pagtanda mo. And as you graduated, makakakuha ka ng job which is suited for you dahil wala kang masamang record at walang nakakita sa'yo. That is for primary evidence. While si secondary evidence, also with Edwin M. Lemert, of course, when a different event comes to the attention of significant others or social control agents who apply a negative label. So for example, the shoplifting student is caught by a security guard and expelled from college, with his law school dreams, thus and his future will become cloudy. His options are limited. People who know him will say he lacks character, and he begins to share their opinion. He eventually becomes a drug dealer and winds up in prison. So, kung sa primary hindi siya nahuli, nakahanap siya ng job or ng job which is suitable for her or him, ngayon sa secondary evidence, may nakahuli sa'yo na nag-shoplift ka. Therefore, nung nahuli ka, lahat ng pangarap mo is nawala. Dahil instead na makamit mo yung pangarap mo, ma-reach mo yung dreams mo, ang mangyayari sa'yo, you will end up in prison. Dahil nagkaroon ka ng kasalanan or minabiolate ka sa batas natin. Next, economic model of criminal behavior, a basic theory. Introduced by Gary S. Becker, factors that influence an individual's decision to engage in criminal activities are the expected gains from crime relative to earnings from legal work, the chance of being caught and convicted, the extent of punishment, and the opportunities in legal activities. So, this is the factors that influences the individuals on how they will decide in engaging in criminal activities. So, bago po makakommit ng criminal activities ang isang tao, ang isang individual, kailangan alam nila kung ano yung magiging earnings nila sa kanilang trabaho or sa gagawin nilang violation or sa gagawin nilang activities. Also, hindi ka gagawa ng crime kung hindi mo pag-iisipan, kung hindi ito planado. Kapag alam mo kung kailan ka mahuhuli at kailan ka hindi mahuhuli. Next, aalamin mo din kung ano yung extent of punishment o gaano katagal yung punishment mo once you are being convicted or caught by the officers. And lastly, the opportunities in legal activities. So, kapag ba gumawa ka ng mabuti or gumawa ka ng masama, ano ba yung pwedeng maging outcome nito sa'yo? Ano ba yung pwedeng maging impact or effects nito para sa'yo? Next is the Carmax Theory, or Karl Heinrich Marx. He viewed crime as the product of law enforcement policies to a labeling process theory. He also saw connection between criminality and the inequalities found in the capitalist system. So he railed against the people who were being beaten down by a system that demanded obedience and cooperation and offered little in return. He concluded that the character of every civilization is determined by its mode of production, or the way its people develop and produce material goods, or yung tinatawag nating materialism. So there are two components in the mode of production. First is the productive forces. So productive forces includes technology, energy sources, and material resources natin. While si productive relation, it is the relationship in industrial culture between the owners of the means of production or yung tinatawag nating capitalist bourgeoisie and those who are doing the actual labor or yung tinatawag nating proletariat. So, itong dalawang to may under pa yan, which is called as lumpen proletariat. So, kung si capitalist, siya yung means of production or yung owner of the means of production, while si proletariat, those who do the actual labor, while si lumpen proletariat, those are workers who produce nothing. In short, sila yung mga patambay-tambay lang na workers, yung mga walang ginagawa, pero sila ay considered as employed. Lumpen proletariat is spelling po Lumpen proletariat. Friedrich Engels and Wilhelm Monger's theory. He portrayed crime as a function of social demoralization, a collapse of people's humanity reflecting a decline in society. So, Friedrich Engels' theory states that working people committed crime because their choice was a slow death of starvation or speedy one of the hands of the law. The brutality of the capitalist system, he believed, turns workers into animal-like creatures out of a will of their own. So in this theory, workers or what we call proletariat became criminals because they suffer from brutality from the bourgeoisie or yung mga capitalists. While in Wonger's theory, ang sabi po, he believed that the crime is of social and not biological origin. But exception of few special cases, crime lies within the boundaries of normal human behavior. According to Wonger, no act is naturally immoral or criminal. He viewed crimes as the antisocial acts that reflect current morality. So, Bonger's theory, in the capitalist system, it makes both the proletariat and bourgeoisie crime prone, but only the proletariat likely to become officially recognized as criminal. Kasi po si proletariat po is mababang uri lamang ng tao or yung mga lower class natin. And yung mga lower class natin is kahit kailan hindi siya mananalo sa mga rich people or yung mga white collar people natin or authorized persons natin. Sila po yung tinatawag nating capitalist bourgeoisie according to Karl Marx. Sila po yung maraming pera at pwede pong makapagbigay ng pera or makapag-produce agad ng easy money. Kaya po kahit anong gawin nila, kahit anong pagpapahirap ang gawin nila sa mga proletariat, kahit po sila ang may mali, ang kalalabasan pa rin po ay pwede nilang baliktarin ang situation na ang may gawa po ay mga proletariat dahil po sila ay may pera. Next, the biosocial model of crime, causation. So, bio examines aspects of biology that influence health, psycho examines psychological components, things like thoughts, emotions, or behavior, and social examines social factors that might influence the health of individual, things like our interaction with others, our culture, or our economic status. So, bio is the aspect that discusses on the things about brain changes, genes, and the functions of major organs. Kaya nga po nakalagay dyan, aspects of biology that influence health. While psycho, this component speaks of the emotions, thoughts, and drive of a person, why he or she may resort to crime, and the social or socio component natin examines how the person socializes or interacts with other person. Kung si bio talks about the biology or yung about brain changes natin, genes, and the major organs, and all in all, ito po yung biology natin. Well, si psycho, pagdating po yan sa thoughts natin, emotions and behavior, or inner brain natin, inner emotions natin, inner behavior natin, si psycho. Well, si social po, on how we interact with other persons. Moral Insanity and Criminal Responsibility by Isaac Ray and Henry Moulds Lee. So, moral insanity was termed to describe persons who were normal in all aspects except that something was wrong with the part of the brain that regulates affective responses. So, meaning of insane person committed a crime. When committed a crime, they are not liable because they have impairment and they committed a crime without intent to do so. That is moral insanity. But if the insane person is in lucid interval during the commission of the crime, they will be held liable because the moment that he did the crime, he is in the rational state. So, sa moral insanity, so in every rule there is an exemption. Ngayon, kapag nakakomit ng crime, ang isang person during his state of insanity, he is not held as liable. But, if he committed a crime, if he or she committed a crime in a lucid interval or rational siyang mag-isip, he or she is liable for the commission of the crime. According to Henry Moseley, insane or criminal according to the standpoint from which they are looked at. He believed that for many persons, crime is an outlet in which their unsound tendencies are discharged. They would go mad if they were not criminals, and they do not go mad because they are criminals. So, sa mga insane person daw po, kapag nakakagawa sila ng masama or kapag nakakagawa sila ng mali, sila po is hindi nagagalit dahil yun ang sa tingin nila ay tama. But kapag daw po sila ay hindi nakakagawa ng kapag sila po ay hindi nakakagawa ng mali, sila po ay nagagalit. But then, vice versa po. Pag nakakagawa sila ng mali, sila po ay tahimik lang. Or masaya po sa feeling nila, satisfied sila dahil alam nila na, dahil sa tingin nila ay tama yung ginagawa nila. Dahil nga po, nagkakaroon sila ng brain impairment. May problema po sila sa pag-iisip. Next is Premenstrual Syndrome. It refers to the onset of the menstrual cycle that triggers excessive amounts of the female sex hormones, which affect antisocial aggressive behavior. So, the link between premenstrual syndrome and delinquency was first popularized more than 25 years ago by Katharina Dorothea K. Dalton, whose studies of English women, which talks about 156 newly adult female prisoners, that she indicated that these females are most likely to commit suicide and be aggressive and otherwise antisocial just before or during menstruation. Kasi mahirap sa part ng babae kapag nagkakaroon. Yung iba kasi sobrang sumasakit yung puson, yung iba naman irritated, sensitive, and that's the only the effects of having periods. So, though in the Philippines, by virtue of Article 253 of the Revised Penal Code, committing suicide is not a crime. But the moment other person will help the woman who is suffering from premenstrual syndrome and the commission of suicide, then the person who assisted is liable of giving assistance to commit suicide. And that is Article 253 of the Revised Penal Code, giving assistance to commit suicide. So according to this article, any person who shall assist another to commit suicide shall suffer the penalty of prisión mayor. If such person needs his assistance to another to the extent of doing the killing himself, he shall suffer the penalty of reclusión temporal. However, if the suicide is not consummated, the penalty of arresto mayor in its medium and maximum periods shall be imposed. So on the other hand, Diana H. Fishbane in her study, Selected Studies on the Biology of Antisocial Behavior, concludes that there is in fact an association between elevated levels of female aggression and menstruation. She further argues that ito po yung naging outcome niya na significant number of incarcerated females committed their crimes during the premenstrual phase dahil nga po they are being aggressive dahil po sa sumasakit yung puso nila, irritated, and they are being sensitive. And another is, at least a small percentage of women appear vulnerable to cyclical hormonal changes which makes them prone to anxiety and hostility. So, ilan lang naman po sa mga number of women ang prone sa anxiety kasi po yung iba ay kinakaya naman nila yung sakit na nararamdaman nila. Gaya nga po nung pagsakit ng puson. Kaya po nilang i-control. While yung other po ay hindi nila kayang i-control. Kaya they are doing illegal acts that makes them feel comfortable. Next is Butterchild Syndrome. It was being coined by Dr. C. Henry Kempe. A medical diagnosis based on evidence indicating that the child has been subjected to a pattern of serious and unexplained abuse. So it is purely a medical diagnosis. Evidence of past injuries is actually evidence of the defendant's prior bad acts, the consideration of which may lead to the injury to improperly infer that the defendant has propensity or a character trait for committing wrongful acts. So it simply indicates that a child found with serious repeated injuries has not suffered those injuries by accidental means. It is the wrongful acts done by the parents or guardians of the child. The victim, if alive, is often too young or lacks the psychological capacity and the courage to testify kasi maaaring na-trauma sila nung sinaktan sila ng parents or guardian nila. But today, since takot ang karamihan sa mga bata na mag-testify, physicians are now allowed to testify in behalf of them as to whether the injured child shows signs of battle child syndrome. Kasi kung dati po, takot yung mga bata na i-testify yung sarili nila sa mga ginagawa sa kanila ng guardian or ng parents nila, this time, meron na pong tutulong sa kanila. And those are the physicians na nag-check or nag-medical sa kanila or nag-check up sa kanya kung sila ba talaga ay injured or nagkaroon ng signs of battered child syndrome. So, next is battered woman syndrome. It is the psychological term used to describe women who are stuck within or have recently left a violent relationship characterized by the cycle of violence, according to Lenore E. Walker. So, battered woman syndrome, it is the cycle of violence committed by her husband, the continuous suffering to the point that those violence or physical abuse also affects the psychological function of the women. So there are three basic stages of this pattern: detention, violent incident, and honeymoon or loving contrition. So when we say tension, nagkakaroon ng tension between husband and wife. Meron silang din na pagkakasunduan to the point na nag-aabot na sila sa second stage natin or yung violent incident, which is this violence may be short-lived or last for a few days. Often, it is at this stage that police are notified or legal proceedings began. Nagkaroon ng tensyon, nagkaroon ng sakitan, nagkaroon ng legal proceedings dahil nga lagi siyang sinasaktan. Tumatagal sila ng few days or naglalas sila ng ilang days yung pananakit sa kanya, kaya nagkaroon sila ng legal proceedings. Last po is honeymoon or loving contrition. This stage reinforces the woman's hope that the relationship will get better, since there is a sincere belief that the violence in the relationships has ended. Civil and criminal proceedings may be dropped or otherwise aborted. Kasi nga po, during this stage, the abuser is often very loving and remorseful. Promises are made by the batterer that he will not violently abuse the woman again. Matapos siyang saktan, magkakaroon sila ngayon ng honeymoon. And dahil nga doon sa honeymoon na yun na ginawa nila, nangako si lalaki na hindi niya na ulit gagawin yun. But then, dahil nga sa kagustuhan niya lang na may urong yung kaso laban sa kanya, naging remorseful siyang tao. Naging loving siya sa kanyang wife. Ngayon, after nang may urong ang kaso, paulit-ulit lang niya na ginagawa. Another tension, violent incident, and at the same time, honeymoon. Ngayon, kapag hindi na nila kinaya or hindi na kinaya ng babaeng ginagawa sa kanya, eto na yung time kung kailan totally niya na itutuloy ang kaso. Dahil nga paulit-ulit na siyang sinasaktan ng kanyang asawa. Next is postpartum stress syndrome and postpartum psychosis. So, postpartum stress syndrome causes feelings of anxiety and self-doubt. So, this time, ba't ba nagkakaroon ng feelings of anxiety and self-doubt? Ito po is for the first time, ma'am, na kapag buntis sila or nakapanganak na sila, iisipin nila kung sila ba ay magiging mabuting nanay, magagawa ba nila yung kanilang obligation as a mother, na yun yung paulit-ulit na pumapasok sa isip nila na hindi nila alam kung magagawa ba nila or hindi. Kaya po yung anxiety is umaatake na sa kanila at nagkakaroon na sila ng doubt sa sarili nila. Next is depression. Depression. It is the passing period of sad or bad feelings. So, bakit ba nade-depress ang isang tao? Dahil sa pag-overthink, especially for the first time mom, like what I've said in the postpartum stress syndrome. Under this depression is the clinical depression, which defined as prolonged, intense, sad, empty feelings lasting 2 weeks or more. So, nakakaroon sila na iba't ibang symptoms like weight loss or gain, insomnia or excessive sleep, fatigue, feelings of worthlessness, difficulty concentrating, and suicidal thoughts. Yun po yung nangyayari po in reality na kapag nakapanganak na po ang isang tao, dahil nga po nandun pa po sila sa stage ng postpartum, kung ano-ano na po yung naiisip nila. To the point na sobra silang nade-depress and makakaisip sila na mag-suicide sila or nakakaroon ng iba't ibang changes sa pagkatao nila or sa katawan nila. Next is postpartum psychosis. Ano ba ang sign na meron ka ng postpartum psychosis? So, it is caused by multiple factors which is uncommon, with only 1 in 1,000 women developing postpartum psychosis within a few days after childbirth. It can dramatically affect everyone involved. Some new mothers suffering psychosis may have to be hospitalized for a short term, or even more rare, an unfortunate few who do not receive right treatment in time may harm themselves or their child. So, ano-ano ba ang mga sign na merong ganito or merong postpartum psychosis? Yung hearing voices or sounds no one else hears, thoughts of hurting oneself or baby, no sleep in 48 hours, yun yung insomnia, cannot care for baby or self, rapid weight loss without trying, she could not control her thoughts as if someone else were controlling her. So, kung sa postpartum psychosis, meron na siyang naririnig na kung ano-ano, na hindi na po niya alam kung tama ba yung gagawin niya or hindi. Kung yung bang mga naririnig niya is yun talaga yung kailangan niyang gawin or hindi niya dapat gawin. Next is Marxist criminology. Kanina, kay Carmax, na-discuss na po natin si bourgeoisie or yung capitalize natin, which is the owners of the production, proletariat worker, while the non-productive people or yung mga patambay-tambay lang na tao doon, but they are considered as employees, lumpen proletariat. The rich use the fear of crime as a tool to maintain their control over society. The poor are controlled through incarceration. The middle class are diverted from caring about the crimes of the powerful because they fear the crimes of powerless. That is according to Marxist criminology, na nagsisimula lang po sila kay bourgeoisie and going down to proletariat and to lumpen proletariat, na kung saan po mas kailangan nating sundin kung sino po yung owners of the production, na kahit na may mali nang ginagawa yung owners natin is kailangan nating sundin for our income and for the benefits of our family. Next is conflict theory. He views crime as the outcome of class struggle. So the class that are struggling here are the upper, middle, and the lower class or yung have-nots natin. Conflict works to promote crime by creating a social atmosphere in which the law is a mechanism for controlling dissatisfied have-nots member of the society, while the wealthy maintain their position of power. It also viewed that crime is defined those in power. So what is power? It refers to the ability of persons and groups to determine and control the behavior of others and to shape public opinion to meet their personal interests. So it was first applied to criminology by 3 distinct scholars, William A. Bonger, Ralph D. Dahrendorf, and George B. Volk. So sa conflict theory, kaya po siya is At kaya po it talks about power kasi through power, through authority, nakokontrol niya po ang behavior ng karamihang tao or lahat ng tao. So these are the three distinct scholars. First is si Wilhelm Monger. Everyone may desire wealth, but it's only the most privileged people with the most capital who can enjoy luxuries and advantages, and that people care only for their own lives and pleasures and ignore the plight of the disadvantaged. Ito po yung tinatawag nating mga capitalist bourgeoisie in which they can enjoy luxuries and their advantages. Kasi po advantages sa kanila na meron po silang pera dahil mabibili na nila kung ano yung mga gusto nilang bilhin. Unlike those people who are working hard or exerting effort para po mabili nila yung gusto nila at makaipon sila para may pangtusto sa pamilya nila. Next is Ralph Dahrendorf argues that modern society is organized into what he called imperatively coordinated associations. These associations comprise of two groups: those who possess authority and use it for social domination, and those who lack authority are dominated. And that society is a popularity of competing interest group. So sa possess authority, gaya po kanina kay William Bonger, kung kay William Bonger, gumagamit po sila ng capitalist bourgeoisie and yung mga proletariat natin. This time, kay Ralph Dahrendorf naman po is yung authorized person na talaga, as in general. Those person na nabibili yung gusto nila and those person who are in authority. While those person who lack of authority are being dominated or naiitsapwera dahil nga alam nila na nasa lower class lang sila and hindi nila kayang makipagsabayan sa mga authorized person. And next is George Bond. He found out that criminal acts are a consequence of direct contact between forces struggling to control society. First is from passing the law, prosecuting the case. After na mapas yung law at may mga taong naka-violate nito, magkakaroon ng prosecuting of the case. And sa prosecuting of the case, meron po yung hearing. Then, after nung hearing, may judgment yan. Now, after ng judgment, nagkakaroon ng developing relationships between the inmate and the guard, especially kapag ikaw ay convicted. Inmate for now is called PDL or person deprived of liberty. And bakit kailangan po ng relationship between inmate and guard? Kasi po sila po yung araw-araw na makakasama. And si guard yung nagpoprotekta sa kanila in the jail or yung jail warden natin. Next is the parole agent and parolee is marked by conflict. So, parolee, but if they do some antisocial behavior, nakakaroon ng conflict between parole agent and parolee. Kasi isang behavior sa qualifications para ma-qualified sila as parolee, and that will mark as conflict. Na kapag yung behavior ng parolee natin is not good, and kapag alam natin na na-serve niya na yung minimum of their sentence, and nung na-serve nila yung minimum sentence nila is hindi po nila ginawa yung kanilang dapat gawin, especially yung magkaroon ng good behavior or good conduct. Kasi meron po tayong tinatawag na GTCA, Good Conduct Time Allowance, and yun yung isa sa mga pampabawas ng kanilang sentence para po kahit pa paano bumaba ng kaunti yung isa-serve nila sa kulungan. Next is social reality of crime. Sociologist Richard Kinney embraced a conflict model of crime who integrated his beliefs about power, society, and criminality into a theory he referred to as the social reality of crime. According to him, criminal definitions or the law represents the interests of those who hold power in the society. So, for example, in the Philippines, the law against robbery and theft are intended for the poor only, because it protects the property of those in financial power or those who are wealthy. Yun po yung social reality of crime, na in favor po yung batas natin for those person who are wealthy. Nakikita nyo naman, napapansin nyo naman na sa balita pa lang, yung mga senators, yung mga nakukulong na malaki yung influensya sa ating bansa is nabibigyan sila ng ah, special treatment. Unlike those on the regular person or regular individual na wala naman talaga silang power para magkaroon ng special treatment. Yung iba, na may special treatment, nadadalaw nila yung pamilya nila, while those person who are in the lower class na wala talagang pera or belong in the lower class families or lower class members of the society ay na-eechapwera or hindi sila nabibigyan ng chance para makita ang family nila. That is the reality of social life or the social crime natin. Next is left realism, introduced by John Leah and Jack Young. Relative deprivation equals discontent plus lack of political solution equals crime. Young and Leah argued that crime victims in all classes need and deserve protection, according to Siegel 2004. Crime happens when a person is being deprived economically, plus the governing body in the community do not know how to render solutions to the problem. So clearly, crime happens when a person is being deprived economically, plus the governing body in the community. Sino ba yung governing body in the community? Like barangay chairman or yung mga members of the barangay or yung mga barangay officials natin do not know to render solutions to the problems. For example, yung problem sa isang lugar is the rampant stealing. So, if the thief succeeds in his first stealing, then there is a big possibility that he'll keep repeating his criminal conduct. Na kapag ka yung isang crime or yung stealing na nagawa sa isang barangay is hindi na solusyonan, paulit at paulit lang na magkakaroon ng stealing incident or stealing crime sa isang lugar. That is left realism. Next is Postmodern Theory. Focuses on the critical analysis of the communication and language in legal codes. The dominant language of society is the language of the rich and powerful. Kasi dito sa atin, kung sino ang may authority, sila ang mas pinakikinggan. And yan nga po yung tinatawag na language of the rich and powerful. Na sila po is nagiging dominant na sila sa society dahil nga po sila po yung mas pinapaboran or sila po yung mas in favor sa batas natin. Dahil kahit anong gawin nila is kaya nilang bayaran to money dahil nga po sila ay mas malaki ang kita at mas marami po silang pag-aari na pwede naman po pwede nilang magamit in case na may mangyari sa kanila or in case na magkaroon sila ng problema. Next is Institutive Constitutive Theory by Greg Barak and Stuart Henrys, which defines crime as the application of harm to others. So there are two aspects of crime. A crime of repression, which occurs when members of a group are prevented from achieving their fullest potential because of racism, sexism, or some other status bias. So for example, two girls are applying for sales lady in the department store. One is with pleasing personality, yung pretty face, have pretty face, tall and white complexion, while the other one is short, tan complexion, but intelligent. For sure, the one that has been accepted was the girl with pleasing personality. The other girl was not accepted despite the fact that the said girl is intelligent. Yun po yung crime of repression because of racism, sexism, or some other status bias. Dahil nga sa ngayon, sa reality, mas pinapaboran nila kung ano sa tingin nila yung may pleasing personality than those with high intelligent or those intelligent person or talented person. Next is crime of reduction. Occurs when the offended party experiences a loss of some quality relative to his or her present standing. So for example, a victim of rape may lose her state of being chaste. That when she meets a guy whom she adore much, the guy's parents may hinder the relationship because of what happened to her. That is the crime of reduction. So, sa example natin, meron ditong rape victim. Ngayon, ah may nagustuhan siyang isang tao na ina-adore niya talaga or ina-admire niya talaga. And nung ipinakilala na siya sa parents, ah tinutulan siya ng parents dahil dun sa naging nakaraan niya. And yun po yung naging reduction na instead na madami pa siya doon sa nangyari sa babae or mapulaan siya dahil dun sa babaeng yun is meron siyang nakaraan, kailangan niyang hiwalayan para mabawasan na yung doubt ng mga tao or doubt ng family niya na kung ano ba yung sasabihin sa kanila ng ibang tao. Next is conservatism and liberalism theory. So, conservative ideologies assume that the ideal society is one in which authority is unquestioned. So, because human nature is basically egoistic, people need discipline or yung instruction for those with the requisite capacity, restraint for those lacking the capacity to understand. Unfortunately, society is threatened by defective people. Those who do not obey the rules and regulation that ends up in committing a crime. Sa conservative ideologies, unequal po. Nagkakaroon po ng nagiging unfair po sila sa bawat tao. While liberalism assumes that the ideal society is one in which there is equality of opportunity and a general consensus to accept differences in rewards as the outcomes of fair competition. So, if we are going to analyze, liberalism is completely the opposite of conservatism or yung conservative ideologies, in which liberalism can be compared to a democratic form of government in which everybody's opinion is respected, and that what matters most is fairness and equality among the populace. While in conservatism, it can be related to communist form of government in which the power of the government is absolute and it controls the behavior and actions of its populace. Yung wala silang sariling desisyon. Nasa isang tao lang po or nasa namumuno lang po ang desisyon kapag dating sa conservative ideologies. Unlike sa liberalism, democracy po tayo. We are equal. Lahat po ng hinaing opinion or ideas na ibang tao is ina-accept po ng ating authorized person. Next is radicalism. Rightist ideology. Racial and ethnic minorities are favored to keep more capable groups from becoming strong enough to challenge the system. So meaning, yung mga workers, binibigyan natin ng opportunity to improve their works without insulting them. While leftists, those inspired by Marxism, or class, racial, and other forms of discrimination are promoted by the ruling classes to keep the workforce divided, thus more easily controlled. So, leftists is inspired by Marxism. Like what I've said earlier, sa Marxism po, nagkakaroon po ng discrimination between the bourgeoisie and proletariat, in which the bourgeoisie or the capitalists discriminated those who are the lower class or the proletariat. Sometimes they uses brutality to them, and that is the opposite of the rightists. Kung sa rightists po, challenge nila yung system in which nag-exert talaga sila ng effort para po ma-improve nila yung works nila, while sa leftist naman po, nagkakaroon ng brutality o nagkakaroon ng pananakit physically para po yung work nila is magawa nila, and that becomes unfair in the part of the proletariat or yung mga workers natin. Kasi po, dahil nga po wala silang laban sa mga bourgeoisie, dahil mapepera sila, hinahayaan na lang nila kung ano yung ginagawa sa kanila dahil alam nila na may mga pangangailangan po sila. Next, rightist radicalism. They emphasize moral deterioration reflected in crime rates as the forerunner of society's political and economic collapse into war among racial and other groups fighting to survive. So, In rightist radicalism, they work harder and fight for their rights, especially they are fighting to survive. Ginagawa nila kung ano sa tingin nila ang tama. Yun yung mga rightists. While sa leftist radicalism posit fundamental and ultimately fatal contradictions in the structuring of capitalist liberal democracy. Nagkakaroon ng contradictions between the capitalists and the workers because they minimizing their labor cost. That will driven the workers to raise the problem. Kaya lalaban sila ngayon sa capitalist. And wala nang magagawa ang mga workers kapag nagsalita si capitalist. Dahil in favor sa kanila due to the fact that they have enough money and that what makes it unfair for them. Yun po yung leftist radicalism. Sa rightist radicalism, gagawin nila ang lahat, ipaglalaban nila kung ano sa tingin nila ang tama. Kung ano sa tingin nila yung nararapat na rights para sa kanila. Well, sa leftist radicalism, instead na lumaban sila or kahit lumaban sila, sila pa din yung talo. Dahil merong pera or may kakayahan, may enough money yung kalaban nila. And ito yung mas nakakataas sa kanila na no matter what happened or no matter what happened to them in that working area, hindi po ito sasagutin ng authorized person or yung capitalist versus natin. Kasi ang papalabasin nilang may kasalanan is kayo. Yun po yung sinasabi ng leftist radicalism. Lastly, for our theory in midterm examination, identity fusion theory. Defined as visceral feeling of oneness with the group that is associated with increased permeability of boundary between the personal and social self. Introduced by William B. Swan Jr. and Michael D. Bursminster. And the fused person view the group as family and believe that family membership requires sacrifices. So for example, if one of the members of the gang was killed and the other members knew who killed their co-member, then there is a big possibility that this gang will join forces to revenge against the killer. Because each member of the gang feels that they are one family within the group. They have oneness within the group. That is the identity fusion theory. Fuse, meaning nagsasama-sama sila. Na kapag may ginawa yung ibang tao sa kagrupo nila or isa sa mga kagrupo nila, magsasama-sama sila para magantihan nila at maipaghiganti nila ang kasamahan nila. That is the purpose of identity fusion. Pag sinabing fusion, fuse or pinagsasama-sama, nagkakaroon ng combination or combine yung lakas nila or sa isang grupo, nagsasama-sama sila as family because they have oneness within the group. Alam nila na it requires sacrifices. Na kahit anong mangyari sa kagrupo mo, kaya mo isakripisyo ang buhay mo para maipagtanggol mo lang ang kasamahan mo. And that's all for our for the remaining topics of our midterm examination. Medyo madami na yung theory natin and meron pa pong mas madadagdag na theory sa ating final examination. So, yun lang and thank you and God bless. So, good luck for your midterm.